All right, welcome to Huge Movie Fanatics here on YouTube. We're going to round out and complete, at this time, the whole Scream series with Scream 4. This one came out around pretty much this time last year.
April 15th.
So pretty much this
2011.
time last year. And I was actually, I don't get very excited about movies anymore because they generally disappoint. So I was actually anticipating this quite a bit because not only just to see what the hell they're going to do, and also just like, it is like a time machine. Like, wow, it'd be the same thing as like if Paramount, you know, put out another Friday the 13th that had Perry Manfredini doing the music with no CG, in an old way. It'd be the same thing, like, wow, seeing another Friday the 13th from that era. I mean, you know that hopefully a Scream, like when they did Scream 4, we didn't know for a while that it was going to be hopefully the same as far as how the killer looked. There was, like we said in the other review, the Scream 4 thing we did, is that there were images floating around.
A ghost face looking like the Rob Zombie Halloween,
or a
scarecrow. Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect, but I remember thinking, I said it before, that just stick with, I hope they stick with the same costume, that'd be so cool. Luckily they did, because that's Ghostface. My review now, having seen it maybe 3 times or 4 times more than I did when I reviewed it, I only saw it once at the time, has changed. I do think, having seen it 4 or 5 times now, 3 or 4, I do think it is the weakest of the, for myself, the weakest of the series. I think that it's got some great moments, but I think it just falls. I mean, it's still entertaining to a certain extent, and it still plays, looks, and sounds like a Scream movie. But I think it, compared to the first 3, it just falls flat. And I think the reason for me, the thing you mentioned when we talked about it before, is the motive for the killer and stuff like that. And then I went back and I thought about that, and then I saw it, and I'm like, you're right about that. The only problem about that, the motive for the killer being, which we can probably just say it now, being a year old, that whatever, I don't have to tiptoe around plot points, but is that's true. But the only problem is, it's like, you don't get to see much of it. You don't get to see much of what, it's like they show one clip of like when they're filming, and that girl, who's actually really great in the movie, shows the iPhone as the guy's walking around with this live feed. My only problem with the whole movie being about, I guess, social media or whatever, is that in the movie itself, that's absent. Even though it turns out to be heavily about that. Do you see what I'm saying? Like the movies.
I don't necessarily agree, because it's like,
I'm right. No, go ahead.
well, like they constantly are tinkering with their phones and stuff like that, and getting text messages and stuff like that.
The movie's about like how everyone's got like a YouTube account, and everyone's got videos and stuff. And yeah, I mean, they're texting each other and stuff.
And that's how everybody sees things nowadays. Like I've hung out with my fiance's sister, and she's just like playing on her phone and texting, and then all of a sudden she's playing a game and then watching a video, and like, oh my God, did you just read that Whitney Houston died, and like all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, all of this is happening in the span of like 20 minutes on a phone. This is everything that she's coming from. So that's why
I understand that.
The phone as the weapon is now a weapon that everybody has, and everybody's using it whether they know it or not.
Okay.
And that's why I thought it was so neat.
Okay. I guess what I thought that she was talking about is like, you know, when YouTube videos and stuff go viral, and people like this, like all of ours do, and when people, you know, and my complaint was, well, you never immersed in that. They never show anything of that, or we never get to see like the videos that the film club is shooting, except for that one quick minute where she shows Gail or whatever, or no, she shows
it was Sydney.
Sydney. That. So the beginning, in retrospect, I mean, the beginning is confusing when you first see it. It's very confusing, and after it's done in the stab 4, and I got to tell you, every time the third scene ends and the stab 4 comes on, I get goosebumps. I'm like, I always do that. Scream 4. Yeah. Sorry, I always do that. If I do that, call me on it so I can.
Okay.
So I can. So anyway. Every time the third thing ends at the beginning and the Scream 4 comes up, I'm just like, oh, that's great. Then it goes into the the crane shot, and that that's Scream, and it really felt like Scream. And I thought the introduction of Sydney and coming back and all that was perfect. And then it just goes flump. The movie, it just goes flump, and it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing here? I got to comment before I forget. The one thing I love, probably the thing I love the most about the whole movie, maybe, is that little scene between Sydney and her niece or whatever. And she says, I love it because I can completely relate to it. She comes in and says, I know how people say, when people say they know how you feel, and you know that they don't know anything. And then she says, I know how you feel.
Yeah, that's great.
That was probably the best part for me of the whole movie, because I'd love to have someone tell that to me. Because I hate when shit goes bad and they're just like, I'm here for you. And it's like, yeah, right. Take it on. Take it from here, Joe.
I've seen the movie, I guess, just as many times as you. I've seen it 5 or 6, and 5 times. And my review really hasn't changed. I think it's almost shoulder to shoulder with the first one. Certainly better than, or not the first one, the second one. It's certainly better than the third one. The opening scenes are really great, and they're surprising.
I'm conflicting, but I think the more you watch them, it's really
They're
confusing the
intended
first
for
time.
They're intended for the first
Yeah,
first
but
time
it's really
viewer.
confusing the first time. The
Yeah.
more you watch them, the more you can have fun with them, though, because
I disagree. I think it worked. It never worked better than the very first time, because you're just like,
I was just confused.
really, this is what we're gonna see. Oh, thank Christ! Oh, they almost had me going there, and then you can go with it, and it sets the tone for the ride. And that's something you really only get the first time. The second time I watched it, it's like, let's just jump to the first part. Like, I know those are stabs.
Oh, really?
5 and 6. I just want to see.
Have you skipped it?
I haven't ever skipped it, but it's
you
like,
felt like it? Your
like,
thumb
come
was
on,
close to
let's watch the real thing now. Like, it's great for first time. It doesn't really pan out for multiple viewings, for me anyway.
One thing I have to comment on really quick is the fact that in the real world, which is the third time, the fact that they did that kind of homage to the first one where they had the blue TV. Well,
Yeah.
TVs really aren't blue anymore, are they? And that
Mine
was
actually still is. Like, when I have my thing off, it just is a blue whitewash to me.
Oh, okay. My TV, I got an LED one, and it's never blue. But
I
guess
do
it
too.
depends
It
on
was kind
what.
of weird. Yeah.
Well,
I have a Samsung.
I got a Sony.
There you go.
So, but yeah, I guess it depends on your TV then. But I thought the blue days were over. Apparently, the blue days are still here.
Mine works anyway.
Continue.
So yeah, I do like that. The whole movie is essentially set to be a remake of the first one, and then it picks and chooses little best kills from all the other ones, and it compiles them. You can't really complain about that, because the killers are making a reboot, and that's what reboots do. The Friday the 13th one just sort of picked and chose the best kills from the franchise.
Did them so boring.
It did them so boring, and this movie kind of does it the same way, but that's because the killers like the originality of the killers from the first couple movies. So you can't. I don't really argue that as
Oh my God, you're doing that thing, which could be true, like Wes about the second
Yeah,
one,
like-
the sequel not being as
Well,
good.
I mean, if you listen to the commentary, like, he does sort of address these things.
So he
and
made so that could be the reason why. Okay.
like, and that's where that comes in. I thought the motive was just incredibly both insightful and terrifying, and like, the things people do to get on YouTube to become stars is just nuts. I mean, that's why you're seeing people pay hobos fighting and stuff like that.
They're dropping iPads right after they take it out of the package.
Yeah, and then, like, just to get like 1 billion views.
Yeah.
And the lengths people go, I fully believe, especially if you've been emotionally scarred by wanting fame, and you have somebody who's really famous in your family who doesn't even want it, or she sees doesn't even really deserve it. Well, I want that fame, so she becomes the victim.
I agree, that idea is great. When I watch it, I don't feel like I don't know. The idea doesn't come across. It's like in the other Screams, it's like as you're watching it, you see it happening. Like, you see what they're talking about at the end happening. For me, you don't see what she's talking about at the end happening.
That's because she says she's a liar. Remember, she's like, I'm a great liar. I even started to believe it myself. Like,
well, yeah.
I mean, she was performing. She wants to be a famous performer, and she's doing that. So, I mean, that's that. You can totally see it on Charlie's face, though. Like, throughout what he's
Who's
trying
Charlie?
to do. Charlie's the other killer.
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah.
can
No,
totally-
I don't mean seeing. I don't mean seeing glimpses of the killers.
Oh.
I don't know what I mean, but anyway.
Anyway, so I really like that aspect of it. It's funny. I managed to find, and it was real from the real Scream website, the ScreamTrilogy.net or whatever I think it's called.
I don't know.
Scream-Trilogy.net. They released Kevin Williamson's original script for Scream 4 because he still hasn't seen the movie, and he just recently revealed he's not going to be involved with the fifth one ever.
Well, if anyone else is.
Apparently the Weinsteins want to do it. It doesn't sound like Wes would do it if
Probably not.
anybody else did. But
No, what's his name will direct it.
Patrick Lucier. There you go. Oh God, please God no. But anyway, I read the original script, and the premise is there, the motives at the end are there. It's really interesting, the differences though, because the whole reboot thing wasn't in there.
Probably before.
It wasn't in the
Oh,
Williamson
so
one.
you
That
think
came
that-
in from the rewrites
Oh.
that Aaron Kruger did, and that's what makes Scream 4 work, is the whole reboot angle.
Yeah, well, to not have that in there, God, that's disappointing.
Yeah,
I don't would have hoped.
you should read it. Like, they mention it at it becomes the killer's motives. We wanted to reboot this franchise. Like, that's essentially the killer's motives or Charlie's motive at the end of the movie, and he says that, but you don't really see it. The kills aren't staged to be the same way they are. That all came from Aaron Kruger's rewrites, and so that makes me respect, I guess, Scream 3 a little more, because Robin Student apparently does have talent. He had a little more hand on the pulse than Williamson did. But there are moments that were not filmed that were so good that...
There's also moments that were filmed in the deleted scenes that are so good.
I know.
I don't know why.
I know. Well, it was cut for time.
Yeah, well,
But my
shit.
favorite scene in the script was so good. It was right after the niece gets her arm
Yeah.
cut, much like Derek in the first movie. She gets her arm cut and it's bandaged. The doctor that's helping her is named Dr. Orth. And Sydney's looking at the dude, and he's looking at her, and they're not making any comment on it. And then he's like, she's like, I'm sorry, did I know you? And he's like, no, but you're probably familiar with my brother. And she's like, who's your brother? And he's like, Stephen Orth. He was the first person killed. Well, I guess the second person killed after your mother. And then she just is like looking at him, and he's like, the media never focuses on what happens to him. He's the one that's entirely forgotten. Yet he's the first person to be killed.
Oh.
And he's like, and then she's like, I never even knew he had a brother. And he's like, there you go.
See what I tell you.
And it was just such a moving little moment. It was such a human, realistic moment, because that's so true. You hear about people getting shot in the news all the time. You don't hear the family aspect of these things, especially if it's a multiple killing kind of thing. Like Columbine, do you know if any of those people killed ever had any brothers or sisters or anything like that?
Or if they had died.
Like, I mean, yeah, you don't get that side. And that was such a great moment. Why was that cut?
That was not filmed.
That was, I'm assuming it wasn't filmed. It wasn't on the deleted scenes. It was such a great moment.
And I can't, I gotta agree, that sounds good.
And then the scene on the phone between, I can't remember her name, the one that you like, the sort of the Kirby.
Yeah, right.
She, the scripted stuff on the phone with the killer goes on about 3 pages longer than what you actually see in the movie. It's so much better. Like, I mean, it's like what you see in the movie is so great. Like, that's some of the best scenes in the movie when she's on the phone and she's naming off movies. That doesn't end there. And she's not like, I won, you son of a bitch. He's like, next question. And then he goes in and he asks about 4 more questions, and she gets all of them right. They cut it clearly for time, but it was so cool seeing
shit.
how she bested the killer until the killer gave up and hung up on her.
Oh man.
And like, oh, that was so great. But the interesting thing was, when they get Sydney at the end of the movie, this is where the thing deviated. It pretty much plays out. Charlie's like, we did it, we did the motives, and then Jill just shoots him, and stabs him, much like in the movie, and then that's it. Then she just is like, sorry, Sydney, your time's over, and she stabs her and sort of guts her, and Sydney falls to the ground, and then she does everything. She doesn't explain what her motive is, like she does in the movie. She just cuts Sydney, and then she goes to beating the shit out of herself, and then Dewey comes in right as she falls to the ground next to Sydney.
Oh, really?
And then she faints, and then she awakes on a stretcher, and she's like, I can't believe that son of a bitch killed Sydney, and he's like, she isn't dead yet. It's touch and go, and that was the end of the script.
Oh man, at the end of the movie?
That was the end. Yeah, that was the end.
Man.
So there wasn't any of that hospital stuff, which was so good. The hospital stuff is the best stuff in the movie.
What?
Oh, without question. And I mean, it's fan service stuff, but it was so good. But it was left open, like the killer survives, and Sydney may or may not be surviving. So, what's going to happen in Scream 5?
Yeah.
That's where it was left. So, I mean, reading that script was really interesting, but I liked the movie so much more than that script had to offer. The script had great moments, but the movie was so much better than that script, thanks to the rewrite. Ehren Kruger did a service to this, and I don't know why Kevin Williamson's in a huff about it.
Gee whiz.
So.
Yeah, for me, it seems like, and even when I was sitting in a theater to a certain respect, but certainly when I was watching it over and over, that it was weird because it was like, you know, gosh, this worked so well in the 90s, you know, the mid and the late 90s, and it felt like the exact, which is what I wanted to see, the exact same kind of thing, you know, the Scream, but it felt like, gosh, this
changed.
Times have changed, and it almost felt like it didn't change with the times in a way. I'm saying that in a bad way. That it was trying to. And another thing which you commented on when we first did it in May, or not, we did it in the last day of June, which is the fact that where's the humor, you know, in the movie.
The movie sort of lacks
it lacks the humor. I mean, especially going from like 3, which was just great with Parker Posey and all that, and it's just like, gosh, you know. And for me, 4 was You see someone? Oh. For me was, in retrospect, it's the least interesting of them. And it's got the most anticlimactic scenes, you know, and it never felt like, you know, I've already mentioned parking ramp, you know.
I actually like that scene. I've seen it repeatedly, it's good.
I don't. And the funny thing about the show, the Screamathon, or the Stabathon, is that you feel like going into it, okay, this is going to be some kind of epic scene like the end of the first one, but it just turns into kind of like a nothing scene in a way, and goes away. And then the end, I don't know, I guess I'm comparing it maybe too much to the other ones or something, but the end of Scream 4 just seems so small, like they're just like, how many people just sitting around on the couch and... My storage for Scream 4 has, having seen it like 3 or 4 times, has been reduced to 2.5. I think it's the least interesting of all of them, and it certainly has. It's great to see. It certainly has great moments. It's great to see the characters back, like Dewey. It's frightening in a lot of cases to see Courtney Cox back because of her face. That's just too bad, and. Certain elements I liked. I actually liked the girl who was in, you know, Grindhouse and Valentine or whatever. She was kind of like a female version of Dewey. As a matter of fact, her name was Deputy Judy, which is very close to Dewey, I think, on purpose. And there were cool aspects, but at the end of the day, it just felt like, gosh, you know, this just doesn't work in this era we're in now. And
as I say, I disagree. I give it 3.5. The thing that I maintained was the best thing about Scream 4 is that, like, the series is about the growth and change of these characters, and Sydney is, for the first time, hasn't changed since the end of the third one. She maintains that character, that newfound character at the very last scene of the third movie. She's that character throughout this whole movie. The killer never dominates her, never diminishes that, and even when she gets stabbed and pretty much gutted at the end of the movie, you feel that she's more empowered than the killer is, and that's where the thing works. I'm all about character and growth, and the fact that she has come beyond all of this is what makes it work. And it's sort of like you say, it's sort of a metaphor for the franchise as a whole. Like, times have moved on, and that's why something like this isn't going to affect you anymore. And that's what Sydney was sort of representing.
Is that why it doesn't affect me?
I think, like, partially. Like, you've seen this, 3 times now? This is your 4th time going in. The movie's essentially a remake of the other 3 movies, like a best-of clip show, and like, it's hard to attack the movie for addressing every single problem that the movie addresses every problem the movie has. So it's hard to criticize something where they know about it going in and coming out. The only thing
why
that
are they making
you
it
can't,
if they know about it? I mean, I don't know. There's just so many problems. It's just
the only thing that I will
they make a movie about
admit
the
to-
problems that exist in the movie.
I mean, that's
Well,
what all of them have been about.
Yeah, but in a fun way. What will you admit to?
The only thing I'll admit to is that and I said it back then, was that the movie feels a little overlong, and it's not that the content is like overrich or something like that. All the scenes that are there need to be there, and there are scenes that aren't in there that also need to be there, which is sad that they're on the cutting room floor. But the movie didn't have the polished edit the first 3 did. Patrick Lussier really needed to come back and do his magic on this.
That could be a problem.
And I
Part
think
of the
that's
problem.
the big
And one
part
thing I
of
want
it.
to comment on before we wrap up is that I can't remember any specifics, but I can remember all the deleted scenes. One just being sad that they were gone, because I know that there was one, I think, where they were sitting around much like they were in the first one.
Oh, that's such a good scene.
And that's when the girl, that's in the trailers, like who's gonna die next, or who's gonna die now, or something like that. And that I don't think that was even very long, and I just thought that would have, for me, that's what was missing. I think that was what was missing in the 4th one, is that they cut out, because of time, they cut out a lot of the stuff, the character stuff that I really love in movies in general. That might be why, because the movie Scream 4, it seemed like it was stripped down to the bare essentials, the points that move the movie along, and that it was stripped away of the character stuff. Maybe that was it.
Yeah, it could be, and because when I watch the movie, I do take into account the deleted scenes after I've seen them and whatnot, and it's like, oh, I wish that the 2 crime scene ones, they have the crime scene of the 2 girls from the beginning that are killed, that one girl is hung and the other girl is gutted in the chair, and then the deputies come out and tell Dewey that the girl has the garage door the dog door slung around her neck, and then he just gets really sullen and says Tatum, and that's such a great moment. Why is that gone? But I get why it's gone, because that's not something that's valid in this movie. That's something that's valid 3 movies ago.
Yeah.
It's so unfortunate that we lost those, but at the same time, they are there, and if you're really dedicated, you can go through and re-edit it all back in and see if maybe that helps. That might be an interesting weekend experiment.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to do that.
All right.
I actually don't have the tools to do that, but I'd be willing to.
Well, book a weekend at Skywalker Ranch.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So 2.5. I'm gonna go 3.5. That's Scream 4 for us.
Sounds like Matt's wrapping us up.
Oh,
No, I pretty much said it. I think I've said it. We are kind of pressed for time, and so I think maybe we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, Scream 4. Sounds like Scream 5 is probably not going to happen. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Because this movie doesn't infringe on the 3 before.
No,
It's
I
its
don't
own
believe.
thing, but it's also a connected piece of the trilogy of Holy Awesome. So
I said it before on June 30th that at the end of the day, and I agree with it. I still stand by what I said, that Scream 4, it just, what they came up with for me didn't warrant the return. But it was cool to see Dewey back and even the characters.
Somebody on the internet pointed this out. Like, would you rather have a remake of Scream, or would you rather have a movie that's about the remake of Scream with the original cast? And I was like, at the end of the day, I'd prefer that. So I'm glad we got Scream 4, because the other choice was.
Well, I've never thinking about it.
Probably, and the other choice is just a slap in the face. Now, this one performed so badly that I doubt that a remake is even gonna come about for it for at least another 20 years. And by that time, like 30, 40 years will have passed, I might be okay with the idea of a remake at that point. But doing a remake 15 years after the first one is just like, those actors are still around doing things. They could have easily been in a fourth one. I'm glad they are. So.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sounds great. Scream 4. Catch you later.
Peace.
Thank you.
All that, we didn't say what's your favorite scary movie.
Ah, shit.